Aileen Wournos had one of the most horrific starts in life that you can ever imagine. Right from the very beginning, she suffered abuse at the hands of nearly every person in her life, and this would ultimately take her down the path of a very dark and very violent life. What happened to this young girl that would lead to such a tragic existence? Was it fate or cruel circumstance that would create the monster she would become? Did she even have a choice? Born Aileen Carol Pittman in 1959 to a troubled family who resided in the small town of Rochester, Michigan. She would later adopt her mother's maiden name, Wuornos. Both of her parents were battling their own demons. Her mother, Diane, had Aileen at 16 years old. She was already an alcoholic, with many other issues. Her father, Leo, went on to prison for child sex offenses. It was during his time in prison that he decided to end it. Unable to cope with a young family on her own, Diane abandoned Aileen and her brother Keith, leaving them both with her parents. This move for the two young children was like going from the frying pan and into the burning fires of hell. Both these young children were to suffer mental and physical abuse. Aileen and her brother Keith were then raised under the assumption the grandparents were mom and dad. This had huge psychological effects later in life for Aileen. It wasn't long before Aileen had lost her innocence. There was no tooth fairy or the excitement of Santa Claus at Christmas for this family. The two children were at the mercy of an alcoholic grandmother and a tyrannical grandfather who had the philosophy of spare the rod, spoil the child. Instead of running around with friends and taking trips to the mall, an 11-year-old Aileen was trading sexual favors for cigarettes, beer, and of course, money. By age 14, she was expecting a baby thanks to one of her grandfather's friends. In a sad, abusive environment that had shown no love to her, how on earth was Aileen going to bring another life into this world? Imagine the terror and utter sadness of a 14-year-old girl who had already been used to this extent. Aileen went into a home for unwed mothers and ultimately gave the baby boy up for adoption. This would be the only child Aileen would have. Not long after the baby was born, her grandmother passed away. Showing no mercy, as usual, her grandfather kicked her out of the house. She was 15 years old. From this moment on, Aileen Wournos was to live a transient life. With no money, no education, and no hope, she ventured into the woods and created a small home for herself. It became known in certain circles that she was now living as a lady of the night in the woods. At the age of 18, she entered the criminal system officially for drunk driving and disorderly conduct. This would become a running theme in her life. After hitchhiking to Florida, she met and married a man named Louis Gratz Fell. Louis was the yacht club president. The marriage was a quick one. Aileen was given to rage, and once she turned her explosive rage on her elderly husband, the marriage was over. After a failed marriage of 9 weeks, Aileen headed back to Michigan. This was around the time Keith, her brother, had passed away from cancer, leaving her $10,000. This money was blown on a car and paying fines, then would ultimately be used on various luxury items. Having absolutely nothing to keep her in Rochester, Aileen decided to head to Florida for good. She then began working the Florida highways and streets, doing the only thing she knew how to do. Already in trouble with local law enforcement, she would be constantly arrested on various charges, from prostitution, theft, assault, forgery, and weapons charges. Written on her record were the words, "poor attitude." The police also said she was an erratic person with a violent personality. In 1986, Aileen entered a bar on a hot day in Daytona Beach, Florida, and walked into the life of Taria Moore. Taria was a maid who worked at a local hotel, and the pair fell in love hard and fast, moving in together quickly, then began a life supported by Aileen. It seemed the couple had a great life in Florida, running scams, selling stolen property to pawn shops. a funny twist in the end. It was the receipts they had from the various pawn shops that would ultimately lead to her final arrest. But this is not for a few years. It was around this time that her life would take an even darker turn. The first victim was a man named Richard Mallory. Richard was a 51-year-old who ran an electronics shop. By all accounts, he was a very violent man. This may have been the moment where she snapped emotionally for good. Aileen claimed self-defense for only this case. The rest were just wrong men, wrong time. The next to go missing, in a similar manner as Richard, was 47-year-old construction worker David Andrew Spears. It was 1990 when he was found along Route 19 in Florida. A few days later, there would be another discovery of a male body between the ages of 40 and 65. His name was Charles Edmund Carskaddon. Charles was a 40-year-old rodeo worker. The police start to notice a pattern. We're now up to number 4. In June 1990, a 65-year-old retired sea merchant went missing. Peter had left home from Jupiter, Florida. His final destination was to be Arkansas, but he never made it. He was still considered missing until a month later in July when his car was found. Witnesses would later claim that they had seen Taria and Aileen abandoning his car, and Aileen's handprint was later found in the interior of his vehicle. Peter's body was never found. In the same month that Peter's car was found, another man would meet his end at the hands of Aileen. Troy Burris was a 50-year-old traveling sausage salesman. Like the other victims, he was found in a wooded area along Florida State Road 19. He had been shot. Up until now, the victims were just average citizens, transient workers, and men just looking for love. It was not until Charles Richard Humphreys, found in September 1990, that it really began to hit home for all of the officers investigating the string of male murders in Florida. Charles was a retired U.S. Air Force major, a former state child abuse investigator, and a former chief of police. He was now a victim. This was no average man trawling the highways. This was a cop. Charles was found, fully clothed, in Marion County, Florida. The final victim was also a reserve police officer, Walter Gino Antonio. He was a 62-year-old trucker who also worked as a security guard to make ends meet. He was found on a remote road in Dixie County. Like every other victim, his body was found while his car had been abandoned in another county. During the murder investigation, police would link Aileen to the crimes. A fingerprint on a pawnbroker receipt, and the handprint inside Peter Seam's car. Another solid piece of evidence for investigators would be the eyewitness accounts, those who had seen Aileen and Taria dumping Peter's car. This was the stage when the manhunt really began for the two women. On January 9, 1991, Aileen was arrested at the aptly named The Last Resort Biker Bar in Volusia County. The following day, Taria was arrested in Scranton, Pennsylvania. It was here that Taria would turn on Aileen and confess everything to ensure she had immunity. Police would move Taria back to Florida, where, under guidance, she would call Aileen, convincing her to clear her name and confess to all the crimes. The trial began swiftly for the first victim, Richard Mallory. In a move favoring the prosecution, the judge allowed her previous convictions to be introduced to show a clear pattern of persistent violent behavior. Aileen was found guilty, although she claimed self-defense. The judge would not allow any further evidence showing Richard's violent past, which included time spent in a maximum security prison for violent offenses. Aileen's retrial was also denied, after the remaining trials for the other victims took place. In March 1992, Aileen pled no contest and received 6 death sentences. She still loved Taria and held no ill will against her. Aileen would then go on to spend 12 years on death row. During this time, she launched several appeals and fought against the system, but it was to no avail. In her later years in prison, she felt she was being driven to commit self-harm. She complained many times about it. She would also complain of strip searches tight handcuffing, door kicking, frequent window checks, low water pressure, mildew on her mattress, and catcalling, in distaste and a pure hatred towards me. Wuornos threatened to boycott showers and food trays when certain officers were on duty. In the meantime, my stomach's growling away and I'm taking showers through the sink of my cell. Her attorney stated that Miss Wuornos really just wants to have proper treatment, humane treatment, until the day she's executed. He added she believes what she's written. Aileen underwent many psychological exams during her incarceration and was determined sane, but suffered from borderline personality disorder and also antisocial personality disorder. This is surely all a direct result of her incredibly traumatic and abusive childhood. During her final moments on the earth, Aileen still loved Turia. She denied the choice of final meal, instead taking a simple cup of black coffee. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all, I'll be back. I'll be back." She died at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Aileen lived a violent life from start to finish. It was filled with explosive anger and tender moments with Turia. Who knows what type of woman she could have become if she had just experienced a different start in life? With Aileen's courage and strong will, could she have done great things in the world? Or was she always destined to be a monster? Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.